Well, you have to compare us. We're part of the South African market, which is the important part. The market in the equities, we're an equity player. The market in equities has been down over the last 6 months by 10%. We've been able to increase our portfolio, albeit slightly, by 1%. So it's still a substantial outperformance to the market, but we're not shielded from it. We play in the same market. If things happen, we're also impacted. I think the one thing that we have to take into account is that we've made 2 substantial investments in this period. We brought those investments in at cost, Tyme Bank. It's really outperforming our expectations. We've made an investment in Rand Mutual Assurance, where we obtained 30% in the holding company there. And we've brought that in at the cost of our investment. And we firmly believe the intrinsic value of those 2 assets are much higher, but our approach is to be consistent. And then, you know, as the year unfolds, we'll get to the intrinsic value as we get to know more and understand the asset better. And so by year end, which is in our case 30 June, those things will come in at its intrinsic value. And that should make quite a difference in the portfolio.
Speaking of time and carrying it at cost, why did you make the decision to carry it at cost? It seems like it's worth more than what you've presented in your results.
Yes, and this is what we say. We agree that it's worth much more, but our policy is in the first 6 months after having made an investment, we only carry it at cost. We don't mark it up. We only put it in what we've paid for, and then as the full year unfolds and we get to understand it much better, we'll write it up. But you know, we're outperforming what we thought can be done. That business is doing very well. We're increasing our account numbers by about 3,500 per day. So it's doing really well.
Speaking of another company that you just recently took control of, RAIN, what is the impact that the reduced cost of equipment is going to have on the valuation of the business?
Oh, it's massive. So, you know, in our valuation, we assume certain incomes. We have an agreement with Vodacom to roll out 5,000 towers, our equipment on 5,000 of their towers. We've done 3,000. So we still have another 2,000 that we have to roll out. We assume a certain cost base in order to put our equipment on that we have to buy, that we have to pay for. So suddenly, you know, with the advent of 5G, a lot of the older equipment, 4G, has become much cheaper. So in fact, we get the same thing that we budgeted for in the same income level, but it's going to cost us substantially less. Of course, the value increases much more. We haven't taken any of that into account, in fact, in our model. As the year unfolds as well, we don't think it's prudent half year. Let's see, you know, bed it down first, be really sure about what we can say. So we don't want to take it in as a value uptick only to have egg on our face when things don't really turn out as positively. So let's wait and see, and then take the value once it's actually realized.
So it's a bit premature for me to ask, what are you going to do with the excess capital?
Well, I can tell you.
Okay.
We're going to invest whatever we make and money that we have in 5G, really taking South Africa into the next phase of communications, which is going to change the way we think about communication vastly different. Because 5G is of a relatively inexpensive base, 10 times more efficient than 4G, which is already much better than 3G. People will just, as they travel from one area to another, know the speed increases that you get from 3 to 4, which is significant. But going from 4 to 5, it is massive. So you'll need fewer towers, data, the costs of it will come down substantially. And at present, we have the spectrum, the only player with substantial spectrum available in that frequency that really plays to what 5G is doing and where the developments are taking place. There will be new spectrum be sold later on, but it will take time. So we have a window where we're the first provider.
I mean, I know Vodacom has also started to put 5G in some specific areas throughout South Africa. It's not really wide.
Yes. Now, there are 2 approaches to 5G. The one is the mass approach, where you put it into your existing network, which happens at around, you know, the frequency where we are, 3.6 megahertz. So that is the area. Then you also have, for particular spots, a particular school, a particular shopping center or so, which is much more the micro frequencies. This is what Vodacom is, my understanding. I'm not too aware what they're doing, what they're focusing on. It's much more localized and that sort of a thing.
Now you also have, I mean, moving a little bit abroad, you have exposure in your portfolio to the UK through your property arm, Magic. What is happening to you guys in light of this Brexit vote?
Well, we have a very particular exposure. So it is to a large extent shielded from what is happening at the top end of the market. We're not in the top end of the market. We're in that space where you get things that is relatively cheap through efficiency drives, the lower end of the market. If you really look at our portfolio, everything takes something that works fairly well, and then we try to, like A2X, our JSE is one of the best stock exchanges in the world, but it's expensive. So what we do is not to try and duplicate where they're good at, we just try to take them on the expensive side. The same with RAIN on data, the same with Tyme Bank on banking. So our banking system is world-class, one of the best, but it is expensive on transactional stuff. So we take on the transactions and try to lower the price. So the same with our agricultural stuff, focusing on distribution. As people move from rural areas to cities, and one of the big mega trends being urbanization, becomes much more important distribution of food and how you get it from the farmers onto central markets and then distribute it into townships and there. So we play a big role in those areas where we can drive costs down. So Magic is exactly that in the UK. This is our model. So it takes these areas where you know property is expensive, and we come with low-cost solutions, and in areas where the outlook in the UK is pretty dim looking forward, these low-cost solutions are in fact substantially oversubscribed. As the economy in South Africa doesn't do well, this is where we go. So this is our focus. The second big part that we don't say about Magic, although it's a property development, our real contribution there is providing opportunity for South Africans to invest offshore, taking rands, to convert it to pounds, which at the time was a good idea. Now in Brexit it may not be that good. But in order to get people to entice them, we had to make an investment in it ourselves. But it was really through a partnership, obtaining and giving scope to others. So that investment is still doing particularly well for us. So we're very happy with it.
Your agri-business hasn't performed as well, unfortunately. I think it was the biggest drain on your balance sheet this year, right?
Yes, but there's a very particular reason for it. We sold one of our businesses. So if you look at the balance sheet, we had BKB in there, which is a very old cooperative, well known throughout the country and very well run. We had an investment in there, we had 20% in them. We bought that stake of just around 200 million. We sold it 2 years later at over 400 million. During that period, we got two good dividends. So in fact, it was an excellent investment. But we got an offer for it. BKB had a first right of refusal. They exercised that. They bought back the 20% stake, but we made over 40% return on our money, 40% per annum. So that is the reason why we actually dropped off. It is because we've sold something.
Profits are down 80%. That's not a good sign. Cash in the business is also down about 30% according to our calculations.
Yes.
What does that say going forward? I mean, is there a benchmark of cash you'd like in the business?
No. You should look at us very differently. We're an investment company. We don't generate cash. In fact, any cash in the business should be invested as soon as possible. We can't afford lazy capital by having simply cash in there. So for us to hold on to cash is very stupid, because our clients and our investors can actually hold that cash themselves. What they give to us, we should invest on their behalf. So when we listed a year and a half ago, or less than a year and a half ago, in fact, it is about a year and a half ago, we had around 4 billion of cash. We've invested it down to around 1 billion now, we should have actually done a little bit better. But we're quite careful in these tough economic conditions not to just throw money, further broaden the diversified nature. So we try to focus, we try to do the right things. The second thing is the income is down, but remember a big part of our income comes from the market. We don't generate, we don't sell things, we investors. And most of that income is from what we revalue the assets at. And that, because of the economic condition, has been lower. It's still much better than the market, but it's not where we would like it to be. So we feel, given the tough times, we haven't reached the hurdle that we've set ourselves. But I think we've done well being resilient in a tough market.
What is the hurdle?
The hurdle is 16%. But we've outperformed the market. Market's done -12, we've done +1, so we're 13% up in the market. So in relative terms, still a good result if we compare ourselves. But over time there will be swings and roundabouts. We will perform. Last time we've performed much better with the market. But when you take these investments, like we've spoken about, RMA and particularly Tyme Bank, bringing them back into intrinsic value, revaluing and upvaluing them, which we will do in the middle of the year now, in June, which is the end of our financial year, there will be a nice increase in value. So really too early. We don't like to take too much in half year and say we've had a great time. So we're fairly cautious. We keep our powder dry, and we'll see at year end how we've really